Hello, good morning. Another beautiful day in the Philippines and another thought for the day. I suppose one thing that seems to niggle a lot of foreigners here in the Philippines, especially those considering coming here, is the matter of land ownership. The ownership of a little bit of paradise, so to speak. I think we can get locked up in the concept, a Western concept, of freehold title. And therefore, we feel that why should we invest our money either in a relationship or into a property, which is part of that relationship. I'd like you to stop and think for a minute. You think you have problems. What about if you were a Filipino and you were part of a big family? Maybe a whole load of girls and one brother. And sadly, your parents depart this earth and go to heaven, supposedly. And what is left is what would be described as the family home or the family properties. You'll find here in the Philippines there's a very old tradition here that everything passes to the eldest son. Now that might seem somewhat unfair, and in many cases I think it is, because it doesn't recognize the other siblings in the same way. Why should a male be entitled to something that a female is equally a part of, that being a family? And when part of the family who owns that property beforehand is no longer here, you would think it would be divided equally amongst them, as does maybe properties owned by grandparents and grandfathers all around the Philippines. And that's why you have so many heirs attached to a property, and in many cases even up to 100, maybe more, all making a claim towards this rather futile effort for 100 square meters or maybe 100 acres, who knows. But the point that I'm making is that so often you get family members going overseas and acquiring great wealth compared to that up here in the Philippines. And as a matter of duty, or also maybe an issue of ego, they come back and they build the family home and create a better family home on the same property. Now, of course, you could say that because they're investing their hard-earned money into the family, they should be entitled to reclaim that wealth on the death of their parents. Now, that could be said to be true, but really, is it at the detriment of those other family members who don't have the financial resources to challenge their right to own part of that family home? After all, does it seem right that out of maybe 4 or 5 people in a family, one should take favour over the other, especially if just because he or she has increased the value of the property by renovating it? Now, you would think that maybe the fairest way to do it would be to say, okay, sister, brother, you built the house for mum and dad and for the family, but ostensibly for mum and dad, and therefore you should be entitled to the use of the house over the others. But the land should remain in the equal shares of everybody else involved. Maybe to the point where that person gives up their right to the land, and that because they own the house, then the land would then go equally in title to each of the siblings. But that's not the way it works here. whilst you complain that you can't buy land, land is taken away, or assets are taken away, under a rather feudal, old-fashioned idea that the eldest son is the major inheritor of property. Now, it is true to say that you can leave a will, but those from a more modest or poor background are unlikely necessarily to rock up to an attorney while they're alive and say, I want to divide my property amongst my children. And therefore, the eldest son in any family has that control and power over all of the other siblings. And therefore, he retains it for his family. In turn, especially if they live overseas, it seems a little unfair that then what was the family home and is spoken about as the family home is no longer the family home. It's the oldest son's home. And whether or not he lives there or not, or whether he takes up residency eventually, is immaterial. But the injustice of that often is further complicated by the other siblings feeling somewhat subordinate to the one that has incorporated the asset as a asset of their own over the others. So they feel that they must sign their right over, without the help of a lawyer, of course, because that would be maybe insulting to the elder brother. And it does seem unfair, but that is the way that the system works here in the Philippines. There are a lot of traditional injustices in a country such as Asia, ones that are driven by traditional values and traditional thoughts. And rather than complain about all these things, you have to do something positive. I built a house so that my partner could have something of her own, something that no other member of the family can take away through some rather archaic, unwritten rule. Therefore, she will be looked after in the future. And I think that that is a very important aspect that you must all think about as a foreigner. Not only are you taking away a daughter from the family by marrying her, living with her here in the Philippines, you are there to provide for her future. And it is important that you remember you're establishing a relationship with a lady, and you need to do that on a strong footing. It's no good saying, oh, well, when I die, this will happen. You have no guarantee. Because have you really asked another lawyer? Have you really asked about and got 2 or 3 different opinions? Because one attorney will say you one thing, and another attorney will tell you another. So be very careful when you set up a future for your partner, that you ensure that in the event, or in the likelihood of you departing this planet too, earlier than her, that she retains totally the assets that you intended for her and maybe her sons or daughters. Just a food for thought. It's something we need to talk about, because so often family members and money don't really mix. It's who has the power, who is the winner. And think about the ones that live overseas, because they have the power, just like you and I. We have the money, they have the money, therefore they have the power. So try and think about your future with your partner. Stop thinking about plan B. There's no such thing as plan B. That's the inevitableness of anything. Plan B only represents something that you're not sure about in plan A. And really, if you're unsure about plan A, why would you put yourself into a position where you have to think about plan B? We're here in the Philippines, boots and all, making our mind up that this is where we're going to be. And the previous videos have explained how interesting a Filipina can be. And it's not meant as a put down of Filipino women. It's just a guide. It's almost like a guide to living in the Philippines and a guide to understanding how so many Filipinas are in their character and their behavior, especially after the honeymoon period, where life reverts back to how they know it, with the benefits of their foreigner partner. So if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Bye now.